Hey everybody, this is Allan Ting, TEDx speaker, #1 bestselling author, and founder of Remarkable Parenting Academy. Welcome to another episode of Expert Series Interview. And today I have one of my dear friends, Joseph Hastreiter. He is a owner of EWH University. He grew up in his own family business, and he eventually became a partner and spending time like nearly 15 years helping lead and double its size. And part of the reason why I want to bring Joseph in is because we at a recent event, we had a really lengthy conversation about parenting and the way we're growing up and things like that, and how he came into his family business. And what the topic kind of like the reoccurring talk came around, like a lot of parents, what they usually do is point out all the deficiencies, what's wrong with their kids when they're not doing right. They do all the imperfections, right? So the topic is really about from what's wrong to what's strong. So this is what the topic about, and nobody can better talk about this topic better than Joseph, I believe, because again, he's been in business so long with his dad. He's also a sales and marketing director, and he works closely with small businesses and other prospects. And why this matters is because he really built a business with his dad. And early on, we're going to talk more of the story unfold, right? So beginning of the story is there's a lot of rub, a lot of tension between him and his dad. And I'll let him tell you more about the story. One of the reasons why I want to bring Joseph on, because I like to invite the parents to shift the perspective from what's wrong to being strong. So welcome, Joseph.
Thank you very much, Alan. It's a pleasure, and thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and this is going to be a fabulous conversation today. Appreciate you bringing me on. Actually, and just to kind of give a little bit more context to like what you shared and the real valuable for anybody out there listening today, especially if you're a parent, is, I had the great blessing of, having the best dad in the universe. And, with that, was born into a family business, and I had a father that was very proactive in our upbringing and in our lives. And then obviously I got to work with him for 15 years and doubled our family business. And we had an accounting business though. And I say that because I'm not an accountant. My dad and I very much are alike, and we're also very different. And we had certain things that complemented each other very well. And we had certain things that were a challenge, but it was, and I think that's the important thing for you out there listening. Those challenges were really because of how we were different and how we were wired. And I say that because ultimately what I'm really trying to say is that based on the type of person that I was very different than the type of environment that an accountant would like and thrive off of. In fact, what I need in terms of environment, communication, support is very much different than them. So even though my dad and I had a lot of things in common, the environments and what we needed in our communication and a relationship in that way was very different in that regard. And, I even to take it one step further, if I wouldn't have grown up in the environment that I was in, there's no way I would have ever ended up in an environment like that. And I say that because, Alan, we have a lot of tools we use to give people better insight and understanding, and one of the things that can keep us anywhere for a long time is a great relationship. And I had that one with my dad. And with that said, though, the type of environment and even life that we would want, just based on some of those differences, can, become a challenge. So just to kind of reemphasize that I wouldn't have ended up in that environment if he wasn't my dad. And I also say, though, because it was a great gift. So I also state that because I got a huge appreciation and understanding. Literally 4 decades, a lifetime of understanding in a field and an understanding a type of person that I wouldn't ever have had that extensive of understanding with, which would to spend that much time together in that type of relationship, right? Just growing up with my dad, being an amazing entrepreneur, being an amazing accountant, having, that type of business, especially we were, the largest in our network, all the opportunities that created for our life, the people we worked with, our clients, university that we created and all of that. It's just to stress really, the things that I went out and learned to understand about people was partly out of survival over the years, especially well over 12, 13 years ago when I started, that's why they do that. That's why they do that. Oh, this is what they really need. That's why he communicates with me that way. So, and it gave me perspective as a child of how to better go through and understand. Not to mention, I was also growing up in the process, right? But anyway, hopefully that kind of sums it up a little bit, because obviously being very different in that regard, we had our challenges along the way. But I stress that because those type of differences, when worked through, can be complementary, not contradictory. But you got to really learn how to understand the other person and then help grow through some of that so you can better meet each other's needs. You're not going to completely rewire each other. You're going to need to give each other some grace, but understand, okay, that's what's going on here. And you can move forward. And then you're not making each other wrong or making judgment. That everything comes from a place of understanding and appreciation, because there's the golden rule and the platinum rule, right? The golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated, but that only works if you're like me. So we want the platinum, treat others as they want to be treated. And that's why understanding some of these insights is really important. So hopefully I didn't babble too much there, but hopefully that gives some context to sum that up for all the parents out there and even kids. This is why it's important, because the type of environment and communication and needs, one of your kids has, and could be very different from your other child. And even then as a parent, what you need, or the way you think your kid should be, or, just better understanding yourself compared to your child, or this is what's really going on for them. It helps better understand how really best support each other and not make each other wrong, and really foster the growth of development in your child in a way that focuses on what's great.
I appreciate that, Joseph. Thank you for sharing all that information with us. I think you sum up basically the entire talk, and I'd love to go deeper. Now, before we do that, if you guys, those of you listening out there, if you guys been paying attention to everything we talked about so far, it's never coming from shame or blaming our parents. This is not our purpose. Rather, our purpose is to understand patterns so that we can connect more. This is actually to Joseph's points, right? So how can we connect more? Because a couple of things that really popped out for me as you talking about this was, number one, really celebrate the differences. And we as parents have a tendency to fall into this fallacy, right? And the fallacy is, hey, our kids just like us. They're our blood, I've seen the DNA, and they should behave exactly like us. But oftentimes they don't. So tell us more about that. What do you think, understanding now different personalities, why do you think maybe at some level, again, it's not coming from blame or shame, it's just understanding patterns, understanding personalities, what clashed, and at what point did you actually realize they're like, actually, Dad and I have a lot of similarities, but it's the dissimilarities that makes us unique and actually bring the strength and the value to the table, where we both see different sides or blind spots, how you guys complement each other. But obviously, before you got to that, the unison, right, there's a lot of struggles in between. I'm really curious about what your journey was like for that.
There's a couple things with that. First off, I think we need to understand that nobody is like us, right? Whether it's your kids, your best friend, your mom, or your dad. And I think that's just important to set the expectation that we all have a different way of viewing the world, or a different model of the world. I think it's also important to understand this isn't about being perfect. It wasn't perfect all the time. And I think, there's some things in life that you continuously learn more of as you go through, like forgiveness. You don't just learn forgiveness and it's over, right? And with some of these differences with what we need in relationships, especially when stress shows up, right? Some of these challenges can still show up. So it's definitely not about being perfect on that regard. What it really is, though, is understanding the value the differences bring to the table. Because I worked with my dad, and also because it's sometimes easier in a business context to understand it. My dad had a certain technical expertise, and I had a certain expertise in people and in coaching, right? Those are very different. I have a client I brought on my podcast. They have a leadership team of 5 people. One's in operations. One's the new CEO. He was the sales manager. One does HR. One does finance. And you eventually go, thank God there's people in the world that like to do that. I don't want to do that. Oh, thank God they helped me with this blind spot. Because even though they're not our strengths, we can't ignore our weaknesses. We have to pay attention to all these areas of our life, even if they're not our thing.
As you're talking about this, it reminds me of focusing on your strength, not your weakness, right? I mean, it's like,
yes,
it's like saying well, duh, yeah, focus on your weakness. What a lot of parents don't. And here's, if I can add into what Joseph and Talk is talking about, give more context. He and I already spoke about this beforehand. So when I was in college, my dad actually wanted me to be an accountant. And I was like, Dad, I'm not a numbers person. I don't love numbers. Numbers don't love me. Well, maybe except for when it comes to the money.
That was your limiting belief then, yes. That was your incantations that you were telling your parents, yes.
My incantation, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So this is back then, right? But I love numbers when it comes to money, but just not accounting. Because my strength is with people. My strength is not in numbers. What happened was, when I got to college at the time, I had jobs in between, and then I got laid off left and right, 3 or 4 jobs, because during the time was bomb. This is the early 2000s, right? So my dad actually said, see, you should have majored in accounting, because if you're majoring in accounting, you would never have been let go. You had a secure job. It didn't play into my hand, because I'm like, again, Dad, this is not me. I'm a speaker. I love working with people. I love service. Can't sit in front of a computer all day, crunching numbers. That's just not me. Fast forward, when I was working at Mercury Interactive before we got bought out by HP. So the moment we got through M&A, merger and acquisition, guess which department they laid off?
Oh, the accounting.
Funny enough. And they kept all the technical salespeople. That was us. And I went back and said, see, Dad, I made a good choice after all. Live purposely, love passionately, and be the most remarkable parent you're meant to be. We'll see you in future episodes.